after talking about ACES and hearing Lydia's story and how support really helped her in her primary school time as well, what we are aiming to do is try and get everyone trauma informed. And what trauma informed practice is, it's not about being a counsellor or being some form of therapist. It's about helping young people and adults who have experienced trauma break down those barriers that people who experience trauma creates. So which stops them from accessing help. So we want to knock them barriers down so they can get the help that they need to flourish in their life, like Lydia got from Grit. And what we need to remember, so what hurts trauma-informed practice is interactions that are humiliating, harsh, impersonal, disrespectful, critical, demanding, and judgmental. And what helps it is interactions that express kindness, patience, resilience, calm, reassurance, accepting and listening, and frequent use of the words please and thank you. And especially like in schooling sort of environments as well, you know, the most disruptive kids are often usually the ones that have experienced the trauma as well. They very often have experienced the trauma. So it's really hard when, you know, especially trying to get educators as well to actually realize, even though they're being disruptive for your class, it's really important that you do not re-traumatize by doing things that could potentially be humiliating, calling them out on stuff that potentially they haven't done their homework or something, calling them out on that kind of stuff could actually be humiliating and re-traumatizing. So for trauma-informed practice, it's really important that everyone can create the 4 R's. That's realizing that people are suffering from trauma, recognizing the signs, responding to the signs, and resisting re-traumatizing these young people as well throughout interactions.
And this relates to parents as well. I mean, you have to respect your children, and little things like just saying please and thank you, it can go a long, long way. And obviously we are relating this to our parental skills as well. So I just want us to always be mindful that if we can relate to this as we would to our children as well, that would be great.
Yeah. Next slide, please. The way that we build these, we can help prevent traumatic experience having such a negative effect on people's lives, is by the 6 C's. That is connection, and forming those connections that we're going to look at a little bit more in coming up. But connections, competence, so they know that they're able to handle any situation. Confidence, so they have that belief in themselves. Helping them build a strong character with a solid set of morals. And contribution, let them know that their existence in this world can make the world a better place. You know, things like getting them involved in community activities, getting them involved in things within the community to show that they can really make a difference. And coping, helping them know about positive coping strategies can also really help build resilience in young people.
This doesn't have to happen. A little help in childhood makes a big difference to where life takes you. When I was a baby, the nurses noticed that my mum wasn't coping and helped her and explained how important my childhood is to the rest of my life. So, with a bit of help, she coped. The police came round after next door complained about the noise from Mum and Dad fighting. They asked how I was feeling. I told them I was scared all the time. Mum and Dad got help. The shouting got better and the hitting stopped. I even got some bedtime stories. I still had problems at school, but the teacher asked me about what was happening at home. I got help controlling my feelings. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough. I'm now married with 2 children, and I've got a job, most of the time. I haven't repeated the same problems with my kids. We got help when being a parent got too much. Our children are ACE-free, and that means their kids stand a good chance of growing up ACE-free as well. Almost half the people in England and Wales experienced 1 ACE as a child, and 1 in 10 of us suffered 4 or more ACEs. If we stop ACEs, millions of children would not become smokers or binge drinkers, and levels of violence in adults would be cut in half. Fewer ACEs in childhood also means fewer adults developing diseases like cancer, heart disease and diabetes in middle age. We all need to be ACE aware. Are you? Doctors, police, nurses, teachers, firefighters, and most importantly, parents. The more you know about ACEs, the more you can help stop children growing up with ACEs in their lives. And for those of you who have already suffered ACEs, the more you know, the more you can help yourself and others who have suffered ACEs cope.
Anybody shocked by the sort of cancer, diabetes, the health issues side of things but relating to ACEs?
I wouldn't say I'm shocked because I think that stress causes does cause illness, because stress is kind of something that you hold in. So it's not. I did think diabetes, not the cancer, but diabetes. I'm a bit shocked by that one. I didn't know that. So that's the new one that I didn't know.
Yeah, it's the whole binging on all the unhealthy stuff, and then the
Yeah,
diabetes.
yeah, for real.
Okay, cool. Great. Well, I'm glad you all watched the video. We're gonna.
So the way that we can help build connections with young people is through empathy. Now, the difference between sympathy and empathy is just saying, oh, I feel really sorry for you. That's really bad that happened. But empathy is actually being able to take yourself and put yourself in another person's shoes.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. And we do it all the time, because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me.
So important. There's a massive difference between sympathy and empathy really builds that connection. But if we can move on to the next slide, please. But while we also put ourselves in an empathetic place with other people, we also have to really think about ourselves, because when we're people that are working in professions where they're constantly helping people, they can get what's called compassion fatigue. And that's when they become so preoccupied by the suffering and helping other people and other people's traumatic experiences that it starts to have a negative impact on themselves. And the continued compassion fatigue without actually doing any form of self-care or anything to prevent that can actually lead to burnout. And once you get to a burnout stage, you have completely been depleted of all your you're just completely emotionally exhausted from everything. And it could start then having an inward effect, where you start having negative thought processes, you start viewing yourself negatively. So it's so important that when we're working in these professions where we're helping people and we are listening and we're sat with them and we're sat in empathy with them in their traumatic experiences, that we also remember that it's so important that we take care of ourselves. If we could go to the next slide, please. For example, this is the exhaustion funnel, and I think it's going to be something we can all relate to. So for example, the first thing, so as soon as our workload or our stress levels get too much, or we've got too much on our plate to do, the first thing we drop off is rest. And the things that we really enjoy, the things that are for ourselves, oh, I won't take that 30-minute bath today. I'll just have a 5-minute quick shower because I haven't got time to do that because I've got this to do. And we start knocking it all off until all that we're left with is just work. It's just our preoccupation with the people that we're helping. And that seriously can have a detrimental effect on our own mental health and lead to compassion fatigue and burnout. So it's so important that while we're in these roles and helping other people, that we also remember that we need to take care of ourselves as well, and even if it's just take that 30-minute bath, or take 10 minutes by yourself to do a bit of yoga or a bit of meditation or something that you really enjoy doing, because self-care is so important and we have to always remember that it's so needed, especially when we're helping other people that have gone through traumatic experiences. And another way that we can also support ourselves is that our emotion regulation system operates on 3 levels. That's the threat system, the drive system, and the soothing system. And we spend most of our time in the drive, right, I'm going to do this because I want this promotion, or I'm going to do this so this happens. And then we also live in the threat system. Well, I have to do this because if I don't go to work, then bills won't get paid. I will lose my house. So we live always in the drive and threat system. We so often forget the soothing system. And the soothing system, for example, right, you know, if someone come to you and they was telling you something emotional, you might give them a little rub on the shoulder or rub their hand or hold their hand. That triggers the soothing system. And if we do that in times of stress to ourselves, it triggers the same response. So just by giving ourselves, just taking that time to give ourselves a little rub on the hand when things seem to be getting a bit stressful, it can have the same soothing effect. And also what's really important is that the way that we speak to ourselves. It's so often we speak to ourselves so negatively, but had someone we loved and cared about come to us with saying the same thing, they'd done the same thing you had, we would speak to them in a completely different way. And focusing on how we speak to ourselves is so important for our self-care and to, again, ensure that we are able to be in the strongest possible place to help other people as well.
So just relating gang involvement to ACES. So ACES can increase vulnerability to a young person being targeted for exploitation by street gangs and those involved in organised crime. I know we've spoken about this before, but I thought it was quite good to sort of just break it down to you in a little bit more. So 61% of all gang members have been a victim of any crime. 31% of victims of 31% have been a victim of violent crime. And 15% have been a victim of a stabbing or a shooting or a gang flagged crime. So we can see the correlation between how ACES now affects the youth violence that we've now got on our hands in our community.